Okay, so the Navi continues when Perek Gimel chapter 3 in the Nebuah of Zecharia. Zecharia says, Vayar'eni et Yehoshua HaKohen HaGadol. In the vision, they showed me Yehoshua the Kohen Gadol. Now, who's Yehoshua Kohen Gadol? We were introduced to him in Sefer Haggai. Yehoshua ben Yehotzedek, who his father was the last Kohen Gadol in Beit Rishon, in the first Bet HaMikdash. And and he ends up being the first Kohen Gadol in Beit Sheni. So Zecharia says, they showed me in a vision, Yehoshua Kohen Gadol, and he's alive. They're alive at the same time. Omed lifnei Malach Hashem. He's standing before the Malach. Satan omed al yemino lesitno. And the Satan is standing to his right. So he's standing to the left of the Satan. And the Satan is trying to instigate against him. We'll see why. Vayomer Hashem el Satan. Hashem tells the Satan, or the Malach, saying in the name of Hashem, Yigar Hashem becha Satan. He's go'er, he pushes the Satan away. Yigar Hashem becha abocher b'Yerushalayim. And Hashem pushes away. Again, the Satan a second time. Because Hashem is bocher b'Yerushalayim. He chooses the Kohen Gadol who served in Yerushalayim. Halo ze ud mutzal miyesh. Isn't this Yehoshua, the Kohen Gadol, who was the ud? What's an ud? Ud is like a piece of wood that stokes the fire. Mutzal me'esh, which was not burnt. What's the story? And why is the Satan trying to make a treg? So, story is as follows. There were two Nevi'eh Sheker. There were two false prophets. And they were not exactly the best of Jews. And they would go over to people and say, B'nevuah, I got a vision that your wife so-and-so has to live with me. Right? That was their nevuot and the like. They approached Nebuchadnezzar. So one said about the other, I had a nevuah that his daughter is supposed to live with him. And the other one says nevuah, now your daughter is supposed to live with the other guy. Right? That was the nevuot. Nebuchadnezzar was no dummy. Nebuchadnezzar says, you really Nevi'im? He says, okay. So, he thought to himself, the Midrash says, Hashem is soneh zima. Hashem hates zima, zenut. So it doesn't make sense that these are Nevi'im. So he tells them, if you're really Nevi'im, let me test you. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, threw them into the burning furnace, and they survived. If you're really Nevi'im, I'll throw you in a burning furnace and survive. They said to him, yeah, but there were three. So you have a zchut harabim. They have a merit of many. We're only two. Well, so he said to them, no worry, you pick a third person to be joined with you. So who do they pick? They figured the greatest tzaddik in the generation, Yehoshua ben Yehotzedek, the Kohen Gadol, will pick him and will be saved in his merit.
He will be the last one.
He'll be the last one. Saved in his merit. What happens? The two of them get saved. The two of them burn in the fire, and Yehoshua ben Yehotzedek obviously is saved, but his clothing burn. He himself doesn't burn, but his clothing do. And we'll see why. So in this, the Satan is being mekatreg and saying, why is Yehoshua married to be saved? That's his first kitrug. Yigar Hashem bechas, therefore Hashem pushes away the Satan. And he says, no, he has a zchut to be saved. And the reason why the Satan's mekatreg here more than other times, more than we find by Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So there's two reasons. One we'll see in the next few psukim. But the other reason, we have a klal. Whenever we give permission to the Satan to go do damage, then we no longer discern. Once the Satan is let loose, then he has permission. Therefore, during the time of shmad or plagues and the like, the person has to be extra careful, right? Because once the sakana is let loose, we don't always pick. There's a whole different way of dealing with the world, and we don't pick between good and bad. So Satan is saying, why are you intervening to save him? You gave me the shoot to kill the other two. Let me kill all three of them. Hashem is igar becha Hashem becha Satan. Go'erbo. No way. You're not touching Yehoshua ben Yehotzedek. And it says a second time, Ve'igar Hashem becha bocher b'Yerushalayim. And even if you don't like his zechuyot, he's bocher b'Yerushalayim. His family served in the Bet HaMikdash. He's going to serve in the Bet HaMikdash in the future. And one who's Bocher B'Yerushalayim, the Kahuna Gedolah, that's his merit. We're not gonna let him burn. Halo ze ud mutzal meyesh. He's the wood that was mutzal meyesh. He was saved from the fire. Yerushalmi says a different story. Why is he called ud mutzal meyesh? It says when Nebuchadnezzar was going to burn, when they went to destroy the first Bet HaMikdash, so the Pirchei Kehuna, the young Kohanim, all ran into different rooms into the Bet HaMikdash to hide. And when they burned down the Bet HaMikdash, they killed 80,000 young Kohanim were killed, went down in the flames of the Bet HaMikdash. And Yoshua ben Yotzedek was the only one that was saved. He was young. His father was a Kohen Gadol. He was a young Kohen at that time. It was called Pirchei Kehuna, one of the young Kohanim. And he was saved. Only one out of the 80,000. He was saved. So also another way why he's called Ud Mutzal Me'esh. The vision continues. Yoshua in his vision is wearing, the Kohen Gadol is wearing this disgusting clothing. Omed lifnei malach, and he's standing in front of the malach. What is the significance of the disgusting clothing? Because his children, it was brought down Sefer Ezra, which was very common, unfortunately, at the end of Beit Rishon, during the period of Beit Rishon, Beit Sheni, many of the Jews unfortunately intermarried, and some of his children did too. So the showing is that his clothing are meluchlach, so he's not himself. He himself is clean, but his clothing, his next generation, is meluchlach. And that's why his clothing burned in the fire. His own sechut yad. But since his children were not in the right path, that's why his clothing burned. But in the vision, he sees that it's begadim tzoim. Mayan vayomer ha'omdim lefanav lemor. And the malach tells those standing in front of him, saying, Hasidu begadim atzoim alav. Remove the dirty clothing from him. Vayomer elav, and he says to him, Re'eh, see, he'evarti me'alecha abonecha. I have removed from you your sins. Ve'albesh otam achalatzot. And now I gave you new beautiful clothing, which is what the Bigdei Kehuna, that you're going to be the Kohen Gadol. And the idea is here that the removing this dirty, Hashem forgave him from his sins. And the idea is that his children did shuvah and they divorced his wives, and now he was zocheh. He was zocheh to have beautiful clothing. Vayomer va'omar yasimu tzrif tahod al rosho. And it says, put a tzrif, a beautiful hat of crown on his head. They place his crown on his head. And they clothe his new beautiful clothing. Umalach Hashem umed. And Malach there is standing. So the vision continues. Vayad Malach Hashem beYoshua lemor. Now there's Malach Hashem. Turns to Yoshua and he says, Ko amar Hashem tzvakot. Im bedrachai telech. If you follow in my ways. What's bedrachai telech? Like we always say, follow the midot of Hashem. Just like Hashem is rachum v'chanun, is merciful, you also have to be rachum v'chanun. That's bidrachai. V'im et mishmarti tishmor. And if you follow, that's mishmarti, ma mishmer, that's Torah mitzvot. And you follow Torah mitzvot. V'gam atata din et beti. And more than that, you'll be done at beti, which means you'll make sure that everything that's brought in the Bet HaMikdash is done kedin ka'alacha, which is the Kohen Gadol's responsibility. Megam tishmor et chatzerai. More than that, you protect the Bet HaMikdash and its gates and everything around it. Benatati lecha mehalchim bem ha'omedim ha'ele. I will give you what we call mehalchim ben ha'omdim ha'ele. Now, Malbim here brings two explanations. What is mehalchim ben ha'omdim ha'ele? Who are omdim? So, malachim are always called omdim. They're always standing. Why? Because malachim cannot go up in different madrigot, different levels. They are who they are for all eternity. As long as they exist, they're omed. They're standing. Human beings are called mehalchim because we're always holech. We always can go up and up from level to level. Mehalchim, mehalech. So he tells him, if you do this, he's referring to the future. when Mashiach comes, you or your descendants will serve to be the Kohen Gadol in the Bet HaMikdash. And in the future, there'll be Malachim walking amongst us in the Bet HaMikdash. And you'll be Mehalech, you'll be Zochet to walk in Bayit Shlishi amongst these Malachim to serve as Kohen Gadol. But the Malbim is the second shah from the Abarbanel. And he says it's discussing the future. During Bayit Sheni, there are going to be times that his children are going to be in the sakana of water being burnt also. Antiochus, who was the leader of the Greeks during the time of Hanukkah, who took over the Bet HaMikdash and tried to burn and destroy the Kohanim. And the deen is what? They were saved, right? They were saved. And right? And they were protected. And because in a sense, they were also Ud Mutzal Mesh. They were also saved from the fire. But the Nebuah continues. But he had Begadim Tzoim, which means some of his children are going to wear garments that don't belong to them. What is that? The Hashmonaim who were saved, the Ud Mutzal Me'esh who were saved from the Greeks, but they're going to wear garments which are dirty. Why they're dirty garments? Because besides wearing the Begadim of Kohen Gadol, the Hashmonaim took for themselves also Bigdei Melucha, the clothing of a king, and that they weren't allowed to. For them, the Begadim Tzoim, they weren't allowed to do that, right? And because of that, they lost, right? They lost the Malchut and they lost the Kehuna, and those clothing were removed from them. That's another way of interpreting the vision that he sees. And he continues, Shemana Yoshua HaKohen HaGadol. Listen, Yoshua HaKohen Gadol. Ata ve're'echa yoshevim lefanecha. You, ve're'echa yoshevim lefanecha. This is his Tamid HaChamim or his students, or some say refers to Chayanya, Mishael, and Azariah. Ki Anshe Mofetim are the people of miracles, because they were saved from this burning furnace. Ki hineni mevi et avdi tzemach. I will bring my servant Tzemach. Who's Tzemach? Mashiach is referred to as Tzemach. It's a seed that germinates and begins to sprout and grow. And in the future, I'm going to bring avdi tzemach. Ki hineh ha'even asher natati lifnei Yoshua. The stone that I gave before Yoshua, which means 18 years before, when they got permission to go back to Yerushalayim and build Bayit Sheni, eventually was stopped. And just now we got the Nebuah saying, we saw Haggai saying, go back and build it, right? But 18 years before it was stopped, but they laid the foundation. Zerubbabel, who was from Malchei Yehuda, who was descendant of David HaMelech, and Yehoshua ben Yotzedek, the Kohen Gadol, Zerubbabel gives the honor of placing the first stone of the foundation of the future Bet HaMikdash to Yehoshua ben Yotzedek. So it says, Kineh ha'even, the stone ashenatati lifnei Yehoshua, that I placed before Yehoshua, Zecharia says in his vision, al even achat, on that one stone, Shiva Einayim. Yehoshua engraved 7 eyes. What does it mean he engraved 7 eyes on that stone that lays foundation of the Bet HaMikdash? So Malbim explains the 7 eyes correspond to the Shiva Kochvei Lechet. There are 7 bodies that influence the world, right? We go Mazalot. We have the sun, the moon, we have Shabbatai, we have Ma'adim, Mars, Jupiter, right? Venus, Mercury. These are all the things that the influence over the world. They represent the Hashgacha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Through them, Hashem is Bashgiach and directs the natural world. And in a deeper sense, so it's representing the idea of Hashgacha. But it's the lowest level of Hashgacha of Hashem, lowest level of Hashem's supervision and direction over the world. Why is there 7? Because in reality, there's worlds upon worlds upon worlds, going all the way up to the 7 Sfirot. Well, you get into Kabbalah a little bit, but just this idea. Through the 7 Sfirot, the 7 goes down from world to world. Ultimately, it's expressed in the lowest world as these 7 Shikra Kochvei Lechet, these 7 stars that influence the world. But it represents the highest level of Hashgacha. The lowest level is the Shikra Kochvei Lechet, which is the natural idea. So he engraved them on the stone, showing that what? The Hashgacha in the world is not going to come through the Bet HaMikdash. Right? Through the Bet HaMikdash, Hashem is going to bring Beracha and supervise over the world. That's the 7 eyes that he engraved on the stone. But these are lower level of Hashgacha, not the same. There's Hashgacha that's coming from the Mazalot, from the constellations. It's not Hashem supervising from a higher realm, so to speak, which means we're in a sense left in the hands of the natural world. And therefore he says, Hinani mefateach pituchanu Hashem tzvakot. but I'm going to open it up, which means I'm going to add another hakika. I'm going to engrave myself, meaning the hashgacha is going to, in the future, Bait Sheni is going to be a lower level hashgacha. It's not going to be what it should be. But in the future, I'm going to engrave myself, those eyes, meaning Hashem is going to mashgiach himself. And that's referring to Bait Shlishi. And I will remove all the sins that are on that land b'yom echad one day, means in the future when Mashiach comes. Bayom ahu neum Hashem, Tzivaot is the last pasuk. On that day, tikreu ish el re'ehu. One man will call to the other, el tachat gefen ve'el tachat te'ena. Each one under a grapevine, each one under what? A fig tree. Why always a grapevine and a fig tree? That represents the two aspects of Torah. A grapevine is gefen, is sod, brings the secrets of the Torah, which one will call to each other, will learn from each other. And always a te'ena, a fig. Fig is the only fruit that everything is edible, right? And there's no pits inside it. And the whole thing is sweet. So it refers to ta'ameh Torah, the sweet tasting flavor of Torah, which is the one that everybody has access to. So that's te'ena, representing that the aspect of Torah that's clear to everybody. And then gefen represents the aspect of Torah is sold. But in the future, Hashem says, I will build a Bait Shlishi that will have full hashgacha, my full supervision over it. And that's the nevuah for the future. And this is a nevuah that Zecharia receives in regards to Yeshua ben Tzedek, that his children are haftacha, that they're gonna not only was he first Kohen Gadol of Bait Sheni, but it'll also be the Kohen Gadolim in Bait Shlishi.
Talk about המלאכים